Forecast.
Hey guys, this is the weekly forecast for April 12th through the 16th of 2021. Okay, we'll start off with the Euro-Yen pair. This is a weekly chart. We'll start off with an overview. Okay, the last long trade that formed was right here. And the last short trade that formed was right here. Now this short trade was stronger than this long trade. So typically, we will be short biased right back down to this pivot low as a target. However, in this case, this short trade already hit its monthly gap level targets. Thus, in the short term, we were long biased right up to this pivot high as a target. And that pivot high target was hit this week. Now at this point, since our target was hit, we'll be waiting for another weekly short trade to form to decide our bias for the medium term. Thus, in the medium term, we are neutral biased. Okay, so let's talk entries. Okay, we'll stay on this weekly chart. So again, we'll be waiting for a weekly short trade to form. Then we'll gauge its strength against the strength of this last long trade. Now, if this short trade is stronger than this long trade, then we will be short biased right back down to this pivot low as a target. On the other hand, if this short trade is weaker than this long trade, then we'll continue what we've been doing. We'll be waiting for a pullback as far as possible so we could take a long right back up to the new short trade's pivot high target. Okay, now if you don't understand what I'm talking about in terms of weak short trades and strong long trades, please watch my price action trading course lessons 1 through 4, and that should clear things up for you. Alright, so there's some possible levels on the monthly chart that this short trade could form, so let me take you over there. Okay, so on the monthly chart, try drawing this trend line from this pivot to this pivot. Now this is an obvious level that price can possibly make that weekly short trade. So let me show you what that looks like on the weekly chart. Okay, so if price makes that short trade right up here, the first thing we're going to do is gauge the strength of this short trade. Now if this short trade is stronger than this long trade, then we'll be short biased right back down to this pivot low as a target. And opposingly, if this short trade is weaker than this long trade, well then we'll be waiting for a pullback down as far as possible so we could take a long right back up to this pivot high as a target. Okay, so let's go on to the Euro-USD pair. Okay, this is a monthly chart. We'll start off with an overview. So since this price action right here is very strong short, and price still having a little bit more ways to go down, in the long term, we are short biased right back down to this pivot low as a target. However, due to this trend line from this pivot to this pivot, and how it was broken out several months ago, in the medium term, we are long biased right back up to this pivot high as a target. Now there's one more thing. In the short term, because there's a little bit of momentum down still, we are short biased right down to this pivot low as a target. Alright, so let me sum that up for you. So in the short term, we are short biased right down to this pivot low. And in the medium term, we are long biased right up to this pivot high. Then in the long term, we are short biased right back down to this pivot low as a target. Okay, let's talk entries. Okay, this is a weekly chart. Now the setup we're looking at for the past couple of months is as follows. So we had a strong short trade, then a weak long trade form. So as price pulled back, we were looking for short entries right back down to this pivot low as a target. And then the same thing happened again. So a weak long trade formed. So we waited for a pullback long as far as possible to take it right back down to that new pivot low as a target. And now this week, that same setup is happening again. So a weak long trade formed. And so now we're going to wait for a pullback as far as possible so we can eventually take it short right back down to this new pivot low as a target. Now let me show you some possible levels that price could possibly make that short entry. Now we'll stay on this weekly chart. Try drawing this trend line from this pivot to this pivot. Now let's see if price could start respecting this trend line with compact price action. Now this could be on the daily, 4-hour or 1-hour charts. However, it must be on this weekly trend line level. And then possibly we may see that move down to our pivot low target right here. However, keep in mind, even if price does get past this level, we do want to pull back as much as possible, so we could create more distance to our pivot low target right here. So even if price gets past this trend line level, we still want to be watching for strong short trades to form, so we could target our short-term target right down here. Okay, let's go on to the dollar yen. Oh, and please subscribe if you like these videos, and please press the like button. It will really help me out, guys. Thank you. Okay, this is a monthly chart. We'll start off with an overview. Okay, so ultimately, we are short biased right down to this pivot low target. But before that, we were talking about the pullback to 107, then to 109, and then down to that 101 pivot low target. So in the long term, we are still short biased. However, in the short term, since there is still some momentum long in this move, and we're waiting for this long momentum to slow down, in the short term, we are neutral biased. Okay, let's talk entries. Okay, this is a weekly chart. Now, if you recall, the first sign of waning momentum that we want to see are two red candles on the weekly chart. Now, this week, that first red candle has formed, but now we want to see another consecutive red candle to form. And moreover, there are a couple things that we want to see on the monthly chart also, so let me take you over there. Okay, so some price levels that we want to be drawing on the monthly chart is, first of all, this one from this pivot to this pivot. It's slightly diagonal, and at this price level where price was rejected many times. Now, in order to target that pivot low target way down here, we do not want to see price get through this range right here. For if price does get through this range, there is a possibility that price could reach this 117 level up here. Now, that 117 level is a trend line from way back here, from this pivot to this pivot. So for price not to get to these 117 levels, the first thing we want to see is for price to not get through this range right here. Okay, so let me take you back to the weekly chart. Okay, so first things first, let's just see for the time being if we get another consecutive red candle on this weekly chart. Alright, so let's go to the pound dollar. Okay, this is a monthly chart. We'll start off with an overview. So there was a weak double bottom right here. And since weak double bottoms typically do not go as target height, which is generally in this area right here, in the long term, we are short biased right back down to this pivot low right here. However, in the medium term, since there's a little bit of momentum long left, we are long biased right up to this pivot high as a target. Now there's one more thing. In the short term, since this pullback down has a little bit of strength down, we are short biased right down to this pivot low right here. Alright, so let me clear that up for you. In the long term, we are short biased right down to this pivot low. In the medium term, we are long biased right up to this pivot high. In the short term, we are short biased right down to this pivot low right here. Okay, let's talk entries. Alright, this is a weekly chart. Now let me explain the setup we're looking at. Now this setup is very similar to the Euro USD and Euro Yen setup. So we had a strong short trade form right here, then a weak long trade form last week, and so we were short biased right back down to this pivot low as a target. Now that pivot low target hasn't been hit by literally 1 pip. So assuming that that target will be hit in the coming weeks, similar to the Euro USD, we're going to be waiting for another weekly long trade to form. Then we're going to gauge its strength. And if that long trade is weaker than this short trade, then we'll be waiting for a pullback up as far as possible, so we could take another short right back down to this new pivot low target. On the other hand, if this long trade is stronger than this short trade, well then that's in line with our medium term bias, so we'll be long biased right up to this pivot high target. Okay, so let me run you by some possible levels where that long trade can form. Alright, first of all, let me zoom out here real quick. Now notice this gap level right here. Again, this is a weekly chart. Alright, so this gap level could act as very strong support in the coming weeks. Alright, so that's one level. Now let me zoom back in. Alright, that gap level I just showed you is at this level right here. Now another possible level we should be looking at is this trend line from this pivot to this pivot. Now we could see that there's a nice confluence of these strong trend lines right at this level. So when price reaches this level right here, it is possible that a long trade will form. Okay, so for the time being, let's just see if price does hit this pivot low target that we were talking about first of all, and then we'll see if price could get down to this confluence level right here and form a long trade, and then we'll go ahead and gauge its strength against this short trade and decide our short-term bias, whether long or short. Okay, let's go on to the Aussie-NZD pair. Alright, this is the monthly chart. We'll start off with an overview. So we had a normal double bottom right here against a weak downward trend line right here. So in the long term, we were long biased right up to this trend line level right here, or perhaps the second target at this pivot high. Now that first target was hit 2 weeks ago, and at this point, we're seeing a price could get through this first target trend line level to our second target. So in the short term, we are neutral biased. Alright, let's talk entries. Alright, this is a 4-hour chart. 2 weeks ago, we were talking about price trying to get through that monthly trend line level to our second target, but fell and came back down. Then on the daily chart, price began to start its second attempt. So let me take you over to the daily chart. Alright, so on the daily chart, the last long trade was right here, which is the second attempt to get through that monthly trend line level. Now at this point, this second attempt seems to still be intact, but there are some trend line levels we want to see respected. The first one is from this pivot to this pivot, and the second one is from this pivot to this pivot. Now we want to see price respect this with compact price action on the daily, 4-hour, or 1-hour charts. Then possibly we could get that move up right up to our second long-term target. Now there's one more thing I do want to add. If you're already long this trade, a good place to take some profits is at this pivot low level right here. The reason being is that if price can pull back and even touch this price level right here, there's a high probability that price can break down right down to this pivot low first, then eventually right back down to this lower pivot low. So if you're already holding long positions, seeing if price even touches this level is a good place for profit taking. Okay, so for the time being, let's just see what happens on these trend line levels, and if we could get that compact price action on these trend lines so we could get through that monthly trend line level right up to our second target. Okay, so that's it for this week's weekly forecast. I hope you guys have a great week, guys. And thanks for watching. Bye.